Sveikinuosi dar kartą po pertraukos ir pradėkime paskutinį.
Welcome again after the break, and now we're about to start the last part of our conference. This will be the discussion, panel discussion. The topics we will talk about are how can we improve children's and youth psychological, emotional environment in schools and informal education. Now, taking part in this panel discussion are Gustė Malinauskaitė, representative from Children's Council, Aistė Kairienė, advisor to the Prime Minister on Education, Science, Innovation and NGOs. Next, it's Žydrė Arlauskaitė, psychologist working at Vilnius Žirmūnai Secondary School and member of Lithuanian Psychologist Board, and Gediminas Tvarijonas, director of the charitable foundation Help the Street Children. The participants of the panel discussion have very, very different, I would say, experience of the children's and youth psycho-emotional climate schools, and let's ask them what challenges they can identify and what they suggest as a way forward, how to overcome these challenges. So what is the situation as of today? We heard the Swedish experience, the Norwegian experience, Icelandic experience today, and we also talked about offensive or degrading treatment and bullying. And we heard how severe the problem is in other countries, and we were given statistical data. We also talked about the initiatives or just measures introduced or actions introduced. And when I asked whether everybody has a serious enough approach to these problems, I heard slightly different answers, but they said, no, something else, something more should be done, because regrettably too many children still are exposed to bullying in their respective countries and offensive treatment. So the question now is the same to you. What do you think when we talk about non-formal education, extracurricular activities? What is your understanding as to the well-being of children? Are they safe? Are they secure? Yeah, I'm looking forward to your insights. I think I'll be the one to start the discussion because I represent children. I am a representative of Children's Council. Well, psycho-emotional environment is not the best. Far from that. It's not as good as we would like it to be. That is for sure. Starting with anxiety, psychological tension, burnout syndrome, depression, and lots of cases like that. Bullying is also prevalent incidents. We had a survey conducted in the school children survey, and which shows that over 50% are exposed to bullying. Over 50%. So this is sufficient proof of how prevalent the problem is. Besides, the responses said they do not feel safe at school, both during the classes and after classes. So again, it contributes towards tension, towards poor welfare of children. Thank you. Gustė, you said that quite a significant part of the respondents say they don't feel safe at school. The school, which has to be exceptionally safe as an environment, how come still many adolescents and students feel safe? Is it? Yes, one of the reasons could be bullying, right? Victimization. Aistė, what's your say? What do you think? How do children feel at school, both during classes and after classes? Seems to me that if we talk about this problem, so probably the situation is not as good as it should be. We had lots of surveys conducted. Let's talk about 2017, when the amendments were introduced to the law and education addressing the problem of bullying. And I think pandemic, Corona, contributed towards making this problem even more severe. So let's talk about anxiety, about tension, disturbances or hindrances of communication, social lives. I think has come to a halt. Again, it's probably made a quality education even not better. I think 4 even scientific surveys were conducted addressing this problem, so we cannot close our eyes. The problem does exist, and quite significant problem, and I would say this bunch of problems, starting with up to its multiple problems. So when we talk about bullying, I think it has so many layers, and meaning we should talk about bullies, about the children who are being bullied, and we have to look into the reasons. So of course it's a major problem in our country. Thank you. Next is Žydrė. You work at school, mainstream school, and children, yes, well, of course they communicate, and sometimes probably this communication is not as friendly. But what's your opinion of the psycho-emotional climate at school? Could I go beyond this question? Because, as Aistė said, Aistė mentioned something that happened in the past. Well, what we saw last year, you know what makes me happy? It seems it's a good thing that this, bullying has become a topic which is being debated or discussed. Even the society members, they talk about that. Yes, I'm a psychologist, professional psychologist, so this is probably my direct responsibility, but we all know that one professional working, let's say psychologist working in school or some other educational institution, cannot solve these problems, because bullying is related to the family, to the school staff, etc. So, by and large, it makes me happy that it is a norm now to talk about it. What makes me sad is that we still have so many problems and concerns. I understand that we are here to talk about school and non-formal education. Right. If the child stays, let's say, after school, it's maybe some extracurricular activities, and then he goes back to the family. So we cannot isolate our activities from the family. No, because parents should be regarded as an integral part of our whole approach. Because that specific child grew up in this specific family. He was not dropped from the moon, etc. Robert knows what I'm talking about. And I think, given the pandemic situation and confinement, and we see that maybe a different expression of more alienation, but I see many kids of younger age, those who in the past did not have that many problems, and now they do. So I think it's a impact or effect of long just confinement. I work with older students, so-called gymnasium, but when I look at the younger students, it just breaks my heart, meaning that those kids never had the possibility to develop their communication skills. And the school is or should be the space which should develop the kids' emotional and social competencies. And these kids, most of them, do not have any discipline, nothing, and they don't know how to enter into contact with their peers. Because right now, all of them seem to be individuals, and we are taught to be patient, not to meaning not to talk how we feel. And they seem to be confused. They seem to be lost in translation when they come to school. And I'm talking about the second grade, primary school. Yeah. I'm not talking about content or curriculum. To what extent they absorbed the curriculum. The teachers are okay. The teachers working in a primary school, they're okay. But I work in gymnasium, and we have a deep problem with regard to the curriculum and the content. And I think the gaps are obvious when it comes to performance and learning. Going back to younger kids, younger primary school, seems to me that many children seem quite challenging to adapt to some kind of order or norms, meaning in school, because in the past we had more consistency, we had some kind of rules probably of procedure, how to communicate with each other, with the peers before the confinement. And now it depends mostly on the family, how supportive the family is, and meaning how resilient a child is. And this is a problem. We want all children to be resilient, and this is something that we have to focus on, meaning to develop their psychological resilience, because life is not a bed of roses. They will have ups and downs, so they have to be resilient. And I heard from you that children, apart from the subject sort of content, meaning mathematics or history, etc., they have to be taught the skills of how to deal with various problems and how to be good at communicating with the peers. And you seem to think that we see a gap, a mismatch, and the kids no longer know how to do that, how to communicate good. And I think we're coming back to this problem. But let's go further on. Gediminas, your turn. You represent non-formal education. You see kids from a different perspective. You work with street children. What do you think? How do children feel, let's say, in various activities that you can offer them? What are your insights? Children, after the quarantine, the confinement, meaning things changed. And many kids come back being overweight. Yeah, this is one of the problems, which shows that they probably moved to a lesser extent, or maybe they didn't move at all. They were not involved in any physical activity, and also the way they feel. Meaning, when we talk about non-formal education, it's a choice. You have an option whether you are involved in it or not. School is different. School is compulsory. And kids bring all the emotions, all the feelings from home, from the family. Whereas when it comes to non-formal education, it's up to you. You can participate in it. If you don't want to, it's up to you. So many children did not come back after the confinement was lifted. But with those kids who did come back, we see problems. And usually, I would say this is the problems related to the atmosphere at home. The way those children are treated by their siblings, or maybe the divorce of the parents, or lots of apathy we see, and overweight is common. And maybe also the confusion of the parents. They are not sure what's going to happen in the future, and they think maybe the child would better stay at home rather than attend some extracurricular activities. I think the child should attend their sports or some other activities, and it's flexible, meaning should be flexible at least. And even those children who decide to participate in our activities, it's easier to influence them. Of course, it depends on the staff, on the coach or trainers to release that tension at times, to make kids feel more positive. So the motivation of children is poor. This motivation was not that good even before the pandemic, and now it's still worse. And I think that non-formal education is a much more flexible form of involving the kids, of exercising some impact on them compared to school environment. And when we see that kids are reluctant to participate in sports, or their obsession with computers, etc., these are not separate problems, I think. The kids from the families, well, again, it's an impact or the influence of the family, which is very significant. And some kids try to introduce chaos. But again, we understand that there must be a problem in the family. And let's say kids coming from the families where there is no confusion, where there's harmony, that kid will not create any problems. And the families in which there are systemic problems, no reprimanding or whatever will help, meaning then powerful tools are needed to help those kids. And I just loved the presentation by Inga Dora, because in Iceland, so inspiring. It's not enough to preach or to tell the kids that it's not good to be intoxicated, to use drugs or substances, etc. No, we should walk the talk, because otherwise just words will not improve the situation. We have ideas of how things, a situation could be improved, just taking the whole approach, I would say.
Now that I listen to you, I hear that there are a number of difficulties, hardships that our children and students face. But I also understand that the situation is graver than it used to be before. So there is now a specific environment that we have to deal with. From what I've heard, I would like to mention the following. How children feel their well-being, so this means that they feel more tension in the environment. There was some tension, of course, but I think that some tensions will continue until there is something more, because there is uncertainty around. There are changes that you don't know what to expect. So uncertainty and tension, these two things are simply more prevalent. And then it is bullying, harassment. So the Students' Council carried out surveys, and we already had the European survey. Over 40 countries were surveyed, so the problem is worldwide. There is a paradox. The pandemic made schools close. I mean, physically, the premises were closed. So what happened next is that bullying could not take place within schools. Did this disappear? No, this problem continues to be here. So the stricter the quarantine, the fewer the cases of bullying. Of course, we know that when children get together within schools, they bully more. All right, when I saw the numbers reducing, I understood that an effective way of stopping abuse is closing schools. And then I asked myself whether that was the way to go. No. So today's conference is to hear different experiences, various experiences. We hear from Sweden, Norway. We hear about partnerships. We hear about not only in Norway, well, partnerships are in Norway, but there are other ways of cooperation in other Nordic countries as well. So my question to you, there is a problem of degrading offensive behavior at school. So how do you see it? Is there any way to deal with the problem? We have to address it, definitely so, but how? So when we started our discussion, Žydrė, you said that the very fact that we discuss this issue is already one way of getting to solving the problem. At least that's a starting point. But this is not enough. We need measures, we need methods. There are methods how to deal with the virus, so there must be methods of how to deal with bullying. So how are we in Lithuania? How successful are we? How do you see the situation in Lithuania? Well, whatever the name, bullying, offensive behavior, whatever, how are we capable of dealing with it? I think bullying, and my colleagues say, and I say, that this is a phenomenon at school, and I'm sorry to say, unfortunately, this is an everyday thing at school. One of the reasons why is because we don't address the problem in a proper way. The fact is that what we do is not enough. And I think the worst thing is that, well, the speaker from Iceland says that it is not enough to give information, to say that bullying is bad, lecture students that, well, bullying is a wrong behavior. It's important to know that we have to engage not only psychologists, not only children, but teachers. Teachers are instrumental here because children and students are usually on both sides, bullies and the bullied. So I think that what I think is important is putting more effort into dealing with the problem. Any other views? I would say, how are we? We are just, we are on the right track. Not much progress. But if we get 5 years back, we know that there are programs in place, like projects in place. When I started, let's say 5 years ago, I saw a very sad situation, and even now, I'm afraid that we have and we know that there was a program, I would rather say a project implemented in schools, but we don't have the result, the achievement that we expected. So who knows, maybe you know why this has not happened. Now, how successful are we in dealing with bullying? Let us first and foremost ask a question: how successfully do we adults deal with bullying? Are we sure that there is no bullying in our offices, in our everyday life, in the media, etc.? So I think we must never separate schools from life in general. So if children say there is a difference between what we're taught at school or expected to do at school and what is happening outside school, they cannot really comprehend, and they will do what they want to do. In terms of legislation, we're fine. We have got all the necessary legal framework, but the practical things are not as good. Again, I want to continue on that note. The Norwegian colleague from the Norwegian Directorate, Education Directorate, he told us about the national program, the plan that was aimed at stopping, preventing bullying. There is an institution, that Ombudsman institution, a county ombudsman. And this is a plan that covers various levels. So they go to teachers, they read principals at schools, and most probably they suggest measures that can be implemented. Well, teachers also are trained and I would even say coached. Have we got a plan in Lithuania of how to remove degrading, offensive behavior from our schools? We don't even speak about kindergartens. We only speak about schools. How can we? I am using the same word, remove it. Remember what I say, we have got the legal framework, we do. So we might say that we have guidelines. So then teachers, pedagogues, the school can take part in various programs and projects. But as soon as it comes to implementation, we have problems. Žydrė, I'm eager to jump in. I want to refer to the period when students learned online. Bullying continued, and that was sometimes very serious abuse. So I think that if we close schools, we will not deal with a problem. You know, if you have that good aptitude to bully, you will. And then you will always find somebody to bully. And we must never forget that every child has a family and comes from a certain family environment. So funding and I would use the word forceful measures, these do not give the required fruit. We have very good preventive programs, and they have been implemented for a number of years. And still, Robertas Aistė is right, pointing to consistent actions that we must take. You know, I deal with various European and world psychologists and teachers, and I think that we have relatively good results. Whatever the grade, we have to work with students from every grade. But if we want to have children who have self-confidence and who want to develop a personality, we must start with kindergartens. This is particularly important. Now, as for crises, very complicated situations, or bullying management, there are very good plans. What we need to do is take those plans and implement them. Every school has a crisis management team. It may be violence or other cases, so those teams must take action. I work at a school, and you can deal with a case if you and when you know there is one. But if there are 28 or 30 students within a class, you may miss something. And if a teacher works with 7 groups of children, they sometimes just fail to notice things. But plans are there, but the implementation side is failing. There are no problems with plans. We simply don't learn. We don't find out when the case. We don't learn about cases. We don't know about them. We are not informed about them. And I think that we lag behind. We never work proactively enough. We are late with our actions post. There are compensational measures are very important because there are children that have too little interaction and communication in general. So experts, specialists are very important. Those that can notice and understand that there is a problem with that particular child. And then we as psychologists can deal with those problematic cases.
Thank you. Interesting insights, yes. You were talking about various preventive programs, and you claim that they have not been implemented. I don't quite agree. I think they have been implemented, but from what I understand, work with schools, actually, school communities, has been halted. I don't know why. I'm talking about coping with bullying, violence, etc. Now, as far as I understand, we are at a halt. I don't know why. Then again, I want to ask you the following. We're talking about offensive, degrading treatment. What do you think? Let's say when kids come to those extracurricular activities or they are participating in sports, maybe we need to collect some data after school about kids who are being victimized, who are bullied. Well, all those extracurricular activities, I think. Yeah, right. We have the laws regulating these activities, and everything. Well, a lot depends on coaches, on their values, whether they are only interested in performance or in the behavior. Yes, so sometimes those kind of activities or clubs, sports clubs, can be more detrimental depending on the coach, on the personality. By the way, we have more bad examples compared to good examples, which we should follow suit. But the kids we support, these 3 children, we comply. Well, actually, we have some standards, meaning the coaches cannot raise their voice, cannot be harsh, because if we talk about team sports, we need a team, and coaches cannot be aggressive. And if a child, let's say, is exposed to stress in the family, then if he comes to those sports clubs or whatever the activities, and again there's some aggression and stress, that's it. And the child will be reluctant to come back. I'm more concerned as to the ways of going forward. There are lots of problems, yeah. And when you attend some sports contest, let's say that the kids, where the kids play in teams, just listen to the comments coming from their parents if they are observing, and that's obvious. We can draw conclusions as to the atmosphere at home, because sometimes those comments are so harsh and they are so degrading. And we should probably work more with parents. Maybe those parents want the best for their child behaving like this. But of course, work with parents. Funding is needed. Now, with regard to the child, if a child is a threat to other children, the school cannot move the child or reject the child or whatever, because school is compulsory. And very often he's supported, such a bully is supported by some peers. And in our sphere, during those after-school activities, it's much easier. We're more flexible. We can actually move the child, or if we see that a certain child is becoming a bully, and if after talking to the child, this child will not change his behavior, then we'll talk to the parents. But if we see that there is no contact between parents and that specific child, then we tell the parents that we can no longer work with their child. We can do that. The schools cannot, as I said. Again, I think that we live in two different worlds. Us and, let's say, the Nordic countries. Let's say in Norway or in Sweden, I think, yes, absolutely two different worlds. And usually they have problems working with migrant children, to the best of my knowledge. And in Lithuania, how can we possibly make sure that non-formal education contributes to the welfare of children? Because could be a very powerful tool. Let's say in all those Nordic countries, about 90% of children attended sports clubs, and usually even their parents were involved. And these are team activities. In Lithuania, no parents attend because they think they pay certain fee, and that's it. My child is your problem. And this should not be the case. In other countries, the situation is totally different. Usually, kids start attending such sports from the age of 4 and 5, and the parents attend with the child these activities until the child reaches, I think, 12 or 13. Now we have the exchange project with the Norway and Denmark, funded by the Nordic Council of Ministers. And the goal of the project is to involve parents into all these programs on a voluntary basis. As Inga Dora said in her presentation, the problem was that children spend too little time with their parents. Right, because the parents prefer working, the children are obsessed with computers, smart devices, and it's important that a child is given 100% of attention. So I think it's a wonderful system they have in Nordic countries. Parents become coach assistants, and they start training their own children. Can you imagine that? and they spend quality time together. Because, of course, they have to complete certain courses, parents, psychological courses, and they come to know their own child much better. And in Norway, they are even called leaders. They are the model example, role model to the other parents. So I would say, yes, but it takes time to develop these skills, right? Not skills, rather, but habits, maybe. Wanting to be part of your child's life. And the parents can compare the changes in their child's behavior. But of course, I'm not talking now about school. Parents can not replace teachers of what, but they can do that in our case, meaning particularly working with those 3 children. And I think parents' involvement or engagement is a priority to make sure that the child feels good, feels safe, feels self-esteem, self-worth. This is one of the factors contributing towards a better situation, preventing all bullying, etc. Parents' involvement, and it's obvious. That's my main idea. So, as Inga Dora said, yes, if the programs exist, it's a good thing. But if they do not actually focus on developing the habits, so then these programs are worthless. But, as I said, it takes time. It takes, I don't know how many years, involving those parents, engaging them. And then, after they have developed these just habits of spending quality time with their kids, that's it. That's the benefit. That's the goal. Our goal will be achieved, I think. Otherwise, okay, if a child starts bullying somebody, maybe that child just requires some attention. And again, he can be a bully, he can be bullied, etc. This probably depends on the character, but these are separate cases. So we have to work both with bullies and the kids who are being bullied. Thank you. And you started sharing your ideas, opinions, and you mentioned the partners from Nordic countries. And you said, yes, we should follow suit, right? And towards the end of this panel discussion, maybe we could raise one more question. How can we move forward? And how can we try to overcome certain challenges? When I say challenges, I mean when we talk about school, and today we are talking about both school and informal education, and we understand that there should be zero tolerance for bullying or degrading treatment. How can we possibly achieve that? Gustė, as Gustė said at the beginning, she said that these actions that are being implemented is not enough. When we talked with our colleagues from Sweden, they said the same. Not enough. Now, can we possibly share our insights? What is the situation in Lithuania? This is not the form or the place to come to some consensus, but it's just exchanging our opinions. All right, the schools have opened up, and the bullying, which has decreased, right, because of the confinement, because the schools were closed for some time, but now they're open. And this degrading treatment has not disappeared anything. And there is a high likelihood that this same degrading treatment will go on. So what are your opinions on, what are your views on how can we possibly move forward? I think, responding to some remarks of my colleagues, I want to say the following. You say it's a good thing we're talking about degrading treatment. I agree, but we still have stigma, both among adults and among children, because children take over from the adults. The stereotype or the myth that you have to be strong because you cannot talk about bullying. This means that you are weak, you are a crybaby. And this is still very prevalent in our society. We cannot talk about being bullied, particularly among high school students. This is a stereotype. And I think one of the priorities is to make sure that professional psychological help is addressed in an adequate manner, and we should not actually exaggerate over things. It's not some treatment. No, but you are free to find solution to move forward. That's why you can choose psychological support, not some kind of curative treatment. On the other hand, we have been talking about apathy coming from children, indifference. I think one more very important thing is that the primary school kids are much more active than those who are about to finish school, high school. What is happening? How come a kid who has been so active, full of courage, curious child, becomes a totally indifferent adolescent, full of apathy? I think maybe her parents have also, in a way, are responsible for such changes, because parents sometimes fail to listen to their child. They fail to understand the problem. So I think, of course, it should be worked out on an individual level when we talk about psychologist intervention or but we should take a holistic approach, meaning some fundamentals should be laid. So we start the discussions, open discussions. So we explain to the kids and to the parents that it's okay to talk about that. Because if we don't, this is a vicious circle. Bullying will go on. And I think this step should be taken. And we should listen both to the parents and to the students, because this is something that we see happening in Nordic countries. School children can reflect upon what is happening in schools. A holistic approach, that's my opinion, my solution. And then we should talk about various measures to be applied on different levels. Aistė? How, according to you, should we move forward?
Well, I will pick up on what Gustė has just said. On levels, we have to do it step by step, and this a holistic approach is absolutely critical. We can never achieve a good result if we work within ministries or within schools only. Yes, there is a program for improving mental health of students, which is fine because I think that students really show the general situation in our society because they're very susceptible. And it is very important to have our parents strong emotionally and psychologically. We must not identify one element, segment, and deal with it. Only dealing with all the possible segments can lead us to good results. It is also important to identify a problem and particularly deal with one. You know, a positive story. My daughter, or whatever daughter, tells about a situation in a kindergarten that something is wrong. Something is wrong within that group in a kindergarten. I called her, I talked to the teacher, and the teacher was very positive. She said, fine, I'll try to find out. And realistically, Žydrė, you are right. We've got the program, we've got the plan. We have to launch it. And things developed in a very positive way. And now we have a very friendly atmosphere in the group where my daughter is. So I think we shouldn't close within one small cell and be unhappy with it and grumble about it. We should be open. We should open up and speak about a problem, and then we can engage the mechanism that is actually available. At the same time, we must develop our ability to behave nicely and to communicate nicely with people, because we know that an individual comes from a family, and of course there are various problems there. Being a mother, I know that by teaching my daughter in our family, I must develop myself. I must teach myself. And I know there is a teacher who invited all parents to a meeting and said one thing only: please try to make your mornings nice in the morning. No tensions, no nothing, because children come to their kindergartens. They are tense already, they're nervous, because there was tension at home, because we all hurry in the morning, quick. So we must relax. We must be able to manage our timetables. Oh, thank you very much. Žydrė and Gediminas, you have a few minutes each. Fine. Okay, I'm not going to repeat about the importance of systemic approach. What I want to consider and reconsider again: partnership, importance of partnership at school and outside school. We have teachers, we have students, and we have parents at school. And I want to get a broader picture. I want everybody sense others. We should understand the child as our child. It is not somebody's child. It is our child. It is. So I think that it is not personal responsibility. It is personal plus communal responsibility for a child, for an individual. And psychohygiene is something that is very important. Psychohygiene is as important as brushing everybody's teeth. Thank you. Thank you, Gediminas. Now? We have a strategic basis. This, that is, taking on board the best achievements of our Nordic partners. And voluntary engagement of parents is something that Nordic countries have already achieved. We must transpose their experience into our everyday life. Engaging parents and engaging children in non-formal and informal education. We are in partnership with Inga, Dora, and other Nordic countries. So parents agree what standards and norms should be introduced. There is a parents' association in Iceland. They meet annually and they decide on what standards they're going to have as guidelines. Okay, let's say Iceland has those things already on paper. We translated it. We tried to use it in Lithuania. One school in Lithuania at least made an attempt to put it into practice. What happened? Well, the idea is perfect, simple, and very, very effective. Engaging children, engaging students and parents. Everything is very clearly set out. And when you come to a Lithuanian environment, that environment at school, we met with very open hostility on the part of parents. They said, "What? I'm busy as I am. Why should I do something more?" So that's what it is. How can we reach parents? That's the point. So we have to decide on the steps. We have to use Scandinavian know-how. Maybe it can work here. You know, we often hear we must do this and that. And when children hear that they must do this and that, they may be not eager to do so. And we need to invite and then engage parents. There should be like a social thing. Yes. Oh, Gediminas, thank you very much. So there are more and more questions. You know, as soon as we have that active discussion, we have to stop it. And I want to thank you very much indeed. Gustė Malinauskaitė Arlauskaitė, the Children's Council, Aistė Kairienė, Žydrė, Arlauskaitė, Psychologist, and Gediminas, Tvarijonas, the charity foundation Help the Street Children. He's the director of the foundation. So at the end of the day, the first day of the conference has come to an end. Thank you very much. I want to thank the speakers very much. NordEd is the project of cooperation between Nordic and Baltic countries, and it is implemented by the Nordic Council of Ministers, and of course the embassies of the Nordic and Baltic countries are our partners. Tomorrow we're going to speak about vocational training and lifelong learning. Again, we will have experiences shared. So thank you very much indeed.